Hello, hello, and welcome to Quackalope, and today we are doing part 2 of our cross interview. Jesse, we've grown a lot in the past year or so. We are currently...
I have to give you a warning.
Oh.
This is one of those videos that we don't edit.
Oh.
Yeah. We just sit here and we talk, and whatever comes out of our mouth and stumbles and mistakes we make...
Can you edit this one?
Nope.
So that people think I'm a good interviewer?
Not at all.
No?
Not at all.
Okay, well... There's reasons why we're doing this interview, and there's reasons why we want it to be uncut, right? We have 15,000 people here now, and some of them don't know who we are. Some of them don't really know who Jesse Anderson is. Sure. And I'm here to shed a little bit of light, a little bit of the spotlight, more than there usually is.
Here's the premise. We've been talking about doing a cross interview for a while, and had wanted to wait until it felt like the right moment to do it. Because it is a weird thing.
Yeah.
One friend interviewing another, one host of a show interviewing another. We almost are either biased in the way we want to interview one person, or know each other almost too well to have a conversation that is of interest to the audience.
Maybe.
And yet, I still think that's kind of interesting in itself. I like the premise that I know more about you than just a basic interview. I might be able to push on some buttons or ask some questions I'm just curious about. That's sort of the whole premise or concept. And so this week felt like a good week to do it.
It was the time. And
let me explain why. This year has been quite an interesting year. I moved back to Kentucky. When we first met through Quackalope, and started doing work together on this project, you officially became locked in as a co-host. I coerced you into it. I was in D.C. D.C. is about 8 to 10 hours away from Kentucky. We're currently filming in Kentucky. We've done this. This is the third time you've been down here in the Kentucky studio.
I'm actually surprised. I didn't think we'd get to 3.
And we are at the very end of a week-long excursion of filming. We have filmed something like 20 so videos over the last few days. We drive back 10 hours tomorrow to drop you off, and then I will migrate back to Kentucky. You know, ducks always fly south. That is 40 hours of driving. That is 5-ish days staying in the same room, I mean, I don't have a lot of space here, sitting in front of a camera, talking with each other, butting heads, definitely getting a little frustrated, certainly having a lot of fun, ruining some games for the other person. I mean, it's been a whole mix of things, and this is the last evening of that.
Yep.
And in about a month and a half, we'll probably repeat this and do this again, but I thought out of all the weeks, we're now at 15,000 subscribers. We're growing faster than we've ever really been aware.
Yep.
We're doing more conversational things here on the channel. And we're both going out of our way in a way to indicate to both ourselves and the audience that, like, we're in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
This is quite a project. So we thought maybe now is a good time to do an interview. Now, I'm not used to being interviewed.
That's okay, bro, because I'm not used to being an interviewer.
But I am used to interviewing, so I'm
Yeah.
excited for our conversation.
Yeah, you're gonna see me crash and burn. Is that what you're hoping for?
No. I'm just excited for, you know, because this is part 2. This will go up second, but this is the first interview that we are actually recording. I'll do my section with my handy little note card.
And now I have a handy dandy little notebook.
Spiral notebook, yeah. You'll be known for the spiral notebook. I'll be known for the index cards that get thrown all over my room. So that's the premise. If you enjoy this, if you like what we do here on the channel, this is very much more of a community-focused video than anything else. I don't expect this to get 20,000 views, but a couple hundred, and a couple hundred people who care, who want to be invested, the people that are already in our Discord community, listening to the podcast, interacting with us. We thought this would be an interesting video for the channel, and I'm a big storyteller. I like historic notes. There's a video that I put out about a year ago before we ever met called On Beginnings, an echo to Zay Frank, a talk or a conversation about a channel that was just starting, and something that now I reference back to a year later saying, that's the idea I had. Where am I now? And that's sort of what I like this conversation to be, this cross interview. We're at 15K. We're in the midst of probably one of the most challenging times for both of us when it comes financially, when it comes just dedication to the channel, producing content, everything across the board. So let's do some interviews. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's invite the community to be a part of that talk, and let's use this as a footnote. So in 2 or 3 years, we can look back and see where were we, where have we gone, and how did what we wanted from this space line up with kind of where we ended up.
So here's the first question, Jesse. Was this my interview or yours? Because
I
you're doing a lot of talking.
I know. I always
What's
do
going
a lot.
on?
Jen, I always do a lot of talking. It's apparently what Reddit knows me for.
So, Jesse.
I just said everything that you could have said in 30 seconds.
That was not 30 seconds.
In about 5 minutes.
Oh, exactly. Thank you. I'm glad that you are so thoughtful about these things.
But I am flavor text, whereas you are mechanics. Jen,
Yes.
this is your interview, though. If you want to take hold of it, feel free.
Jesse, how are you feeling, man?
Oh, by the way, we have not crossed questions. We have not talked about the conversation we're having.
Mm-hmm.
And the other note I was going to make is, if you appreciate what we're doing here, there's a link to the Patreon at the top of the video. I don't expect everyone to go over there, but genuinely, for us to do this, that is the way we move forward.
Excellent. Well,
what was your question?
Jesse, how are you doing? How has this week been? Has it been as exciting
This week?
and fun as I've
You
perceived
ruined
it?
a few games for me.
What? How dare you? I didn't ruin games for you. We played games and then you discovered you didn't like them. It wasn't
true.
on me.
That's true. This week's been good. We always need to prep more than we have. That is always the standard. The biggest mistake either of us make whenever we're doing literally anything is not studying our butts off before we sit down.
There's
to do
reasons for
something.
that, though.
Because we are both constantly working, trying to maintain the amount of production we have, and because there's literally a table that I can stare at right there that has something like 20 games that we wanted to cover. This week's been good. We've started something that I've wanted to do for a year and a half, the Kingdom Death campaign. And I'm glad I got a chance to start that with you. As far as our friendship goes, this is a stressful adventure, right, for both of us. But it's been fun. One thing that I think we've always had, one reason why I think we've worked well together is even though we are nearly opposite, legitimately,
They don't know the half of it.
we always do typically communicate fairly well. We usually give each other enough space when we need it, or enough attention when we need it, even if we don't like it. And so I don't feel like we'll leave. I don't feel like I'll drop you off in DC tomorrow. I'll feel like I'll be glad to have some space, and you'll be glad to see your wife. But I won't drop you off thinking like, oh, I'm glad, it's
horrible. Gee,
it's been exhausting. It's been exhausting. I'll drop you off and be excited for the next time we get together. It's been good to have more time than just a weekend to produce stuff.
And we've had such cool times. We've had times that reminded us why we started to work together.
Sure.
That very first day, I remember you saying oh, that's why you're the co-host. That's why we're doing this.
Sure.
That was amazing.
Sure.
And we've had lows and highs, and I think it's been a really interesting experience, right? Because we've done road trips. We've gone to conventions.
Sure.
We've done things in the past.
And the cool thing is this summer we've been doing a road trip podcast. I mean, we, on the way down here, every time do a Q&A with our Patreon plug, where we think we have 15 hours or close to 15 hours worth of road trip podcasting where we just answer questions to each other, which probably set the stage for a lot of these questions that we're asking now.
No, it's so cool. Honestly, it's been a long time since I've been able to sit with one of my close friends and just be hanging out with them. After everybody grows up and after we all have professions that keep us away from the people that we love and appreciate.
We don't all have professions.
Correct. It's nice to have the opportunity
Someone
to
who's
get
unemployed. I hear what you're saying, Jan.
But it's good to have that bonding time. It's something that I didn't think I'd ever have the opportunity to do again, but then thanks to this crazy thing that we're doing, we're able to kind of grow our friendships and also grow this channel that we've worked so hard for. I don't know. It's such a beautiful thing that you've helped create. Honestly, I'm so grateful to be here with you, and above all, that you have the drive and the energy and just the general patience to do road trips across the country.
Sure.
Just so you can pick up this one guy that just, sort of
Look,
a good beard
listen. Well, you do have a good beard.
That's pretty much it. I wasn't going to add anything else to that.
True. I mean, I've got reasons for picking Jan up. Here's the thing. I have someone across the country that's willing to be picked up.
That's true.
That is hard to find. It's hard to find someone an hour away willing to be picked up, right? If I've got anyone anywhere willing to do this, well, then I'll go out of my way to get them here, right?
And man, I don't think I ever expected us to be like in the level of trust and friendship that we are today when we started. Like, I know that we were going to be like good partners, and I had a feeling that you were someone that, like, this is someone to grow with in terms of like a business and all these things that are much more serious and professional and all that stuff. But I can confidently say today that you've become like one of my best friends, especially in adulthood, which is insane. That never happens, right? Like, one of my best friends, like, my best friends are from 30 years. Like, I grew up with them in preschool, and then from that point, I can count on one hand the people that I would consider like someone that I would call in a moment of emergency or in a moment of true desperation, and you've become one of those people.
Be there in 8 hours.
Correct.
We're not speeding.
And I know you're not joking. That's the crazy thing. I know you're so serious about that. And we can have situations where we might not feel like talking one day, or we might be a little bit more serious, or something has us down, but I know I can trust you.
Sure.
And that honestly has been such a wonderful result of Quackalope. And I told you today, that if anything ever happened with Quackalope for some reason stopped making you happy, that I prefer...
didn't want to be my friend anymore.
No, that I prefer your happiness over anything else.
Oh.
And I, honestly, I didn't think that I would be in that mindset, like, way back then.
Back then you were like, Quackalope above anything. Sacrifice Jesse at the stake.
I wasn't expecting it.
Sure.
It's been really nice.
It's
been amazing.
My method has always been, and I've tried to describe this to you as well, like, I'm tugging a thing uphill, right? And you showed up and you were like, hey, I really like this thing you're tugging. And I'm like, you want to pull a little bit? And you're like, and you did a little bit. And I was like, you did good. You pull harder? And you're like, I don't know if I can. And I'm like, you might have the strength to do it. I mean, I'm going to pull harder. You try a little bit. Just keep... And so that's always been my philosophy around it. And out of everyone, you're the one that has latched on and yanked the rope as hard as you can, right?
Even when you didn't expect me to.
Sure. And that alone, like, outside of anything else, outside of how much you're working compared to how much I'm working, what your drive level is, how much stake you have in certain projects, like, you still have a full-time job, you still have a relationship. Like, I have shut down nearly my life in pursuit of a thing for the time being. And you're the one that's still there yanking on the rope with me, right? Like, that's valuable, immensely so.
Man, and I've told you 1,000 times, I want to feel like someone that's adding something to your endeavor.
Perfect time for a podcast plug, Jan.
If you haven't listened to the Quackalope podcast, it's available in everywhere you consume your podcasts.
The reason that's important is because that is your thing. That is something that I've wanted to do for a year and a half that I haven't been able to. And not only that, you're editing it, you're posting it, you're advertising it, you're marketing it. All I am is a voice and a platform that we're working together on. The other thing is you're doing a better job on it, first off, than I ever could have done. But second off, than a lot of other creators around that space. Like, what you're doing from this ground up, you had music in your past, but no audio or technical engineering, especially not around podcasting. And it's one of my favorite moments of the week. So, jumping back to your question here, how am I doing? You asked around this week specifically. Now, there's a broader question there, right?
I was going to get to that.
The community as a whole echoes it. I figured it was coming. I've described this element to, I think, people on a personal level, and I've become very attached to. I'm really particular about language. I try not to. Even music is a good example. I don't listen to music that I don't agree with the lyrics of, because I don't sing along with things. I don't say things. I try very particularly to and I don't always get it right, but I try very particularly to use language in a way that feels very true. And over the last month, as we've ramped up production, as we've been traveling back and forth, and just the scale of things have been growing, I figured out a way to describe how I'm feeling about as accurately as I think I can figure out.
Oh, whoa.
So
okay, pretty big?
I had a contract canceled this month. You know about it. I mean, I lost... Since March, I used to be an event photographer, videographer. Since March, we've had 12 plus grand of contracts just completely canceled, and I thought I was finally getting some more. And just the ripcord got pulled.
Yep.
And my description for that was, it's like I'm swimming in an underground tunnel, like fully immersed in water. I saw like a pocket of air, and it wasn't there.
Oh.
Right? Like, that was the feeling. Like, that just breathlessness of you're exhausted, you don't quite know where you're headed, and like, there's not much to breathe. Like, that's kind of the feeling. And it's not a negative one. It's just really is the state of things. This has been an awful year. Like, a mess of one. And so I am swimming forward as persistently as I can until I get somewhere where there's some air.
And where do you see this hypothetical air being?
I don't know. That's the point of being underground in a tunnel. The only thing you can do is press on. Because if you stop, then you're in a lot of trouble.
So, in this journey that you've had in a couple of months, have there been any silver linings, things that have given you, like, the impetus to keep moving forward?
I mean, I love being back in Kentucky. You knew I was getting tired of DC. I mean, just the city life and how claustrophobic and expensive that was, especially with the burden of, like, extra contracts and stuff like that, just not coming through due to things that are out of my control. Being back in DC is awesome. Or no, being back in Kentucky.
I would assume no DC.
Yeah. Being back in more rural Kentucky is awesome because I get to spend time outside, relaxing and breathing a little bit. Right? Like, I really like being outside. I read a book. That's been fun. We've canceled. We got to a point where I had accepted way too much work. Not just contracts, but commitments. That's because that is more overbearing than these sort of contracts and stuff. And we still have so many commitments, and we're just plodding away at them. Like, we are slow. I'm slow moving because it is largely just me when it comes to the video production side of things. But there's certainly been silver linings. The fact that we've started saying no to, like, I've learned better as we've grown that I need to say no to a lot more. So we're now covering games that we both have approved, and I am specifically excited and passionate about. We're doing things like Kingdom Death and the other side projects that have just been on my mind and where my heart has been for a while. I finally have a way to execute on those in a way that I feel does justice to something that I care that much about. And the podcast has been a big silver lining. I love listening to that thing. It's great. Like genuinely, I'm still frustrated that this week, the most frustrating part of this week, is that I was trying to go to sleep listening to the podcast, and you told me to turn it down.
I didn't tell you to turn it off.
You said quieter.
Yeah, that's all
I
I
had
said.
bad hearing, so I couldn't hear it that much. So my habit of going to sleep listening to things has been a little disrupted, which isn't a big deal because I've been exhausted enough. I haven't finished the show this week, and it's one of my favorite episodes yet.
The gag was great. This week gags was really good.
Yeah. So there's definitely been silver linings. It's not that I am, it's more a state of being. Like, and there's nothing I can really do to control for that other than pressing forward. But it doesn't mean it's not a thing you can just get out of, right? Like,
Well, here's the thing, like, I noticed way back, like, when you were in DC already, I noticed, like, your overall state of being. I noticed that there were certain elements that were getting you really frustrated about, like, that constant grind. And lately, and people have seen it on the channel, you've been experimenting on a lot more. You've been bringing in new formats, you've been bringing in new and different things.
I love doing the new stuff. The new formats, the daily content, all of that, while it's so much work, I've enjoyed that process. The trick has always been, and the problem is, and I've tried to emphasize this to you when you've been part of this project, and you're having to do more and more things that go against this philosophy because you're more and more committed to the thing. But my point has always been, hey, if you're going to pull on this rope, if you're going to be here working with me, make sure you're enjoying it as well. Like, have fun. And if something isn't fun, you don't do it.
Yep.
It's the same motto that I have with our moderator team in the Discord. You don't deal with problems. You're here to facilitate and protect our community, to make it a place that welcomes and invites and is good to people. But the moment something's an issue, you're welcome to ban, mute, kick. Luckily we haven't had to deal with this.
Correct.
But you're welcome to. But the moment you do, it becomes my problem. I take the end of that burden because that's not why you're here. Right? That's not what you signed up for. It's the same thing with you. It's less so with me. If we overcommit, if I overstretch, if the world goes crazy and this becomes my full-time career, it takes 3 weeks to get to a point where I'm back to experimenting or having fun.
Yeah, you can
Or
pivot.
it takes me, instead of pivoting immediately, instead of you being like, hey, I'm not enjoying responding to these things, and I'm like, okay, I got that. Like, I'll pick that up. That's okay. If you're not having fun, that's all right. On my side of things, I'm like, I overcommitted, and this is no longer fun.
Mm-hmm.
A month from now, I get a pocket of air where I'm able to go, Kingdom Death, all right, here, let's go.
And you're there right now.
Yeah, we're having more fun this week.
We're currently in that space where you can actually put on the table the things that you've been wanting to cover for a long time.
It took a month and a half to make some changes, and there's still some things we need to do. But we are reevaluating and reinventing and adapting to, what is good for the channel and good for us.
And speaking of that, if people don't know, you're a person that you have almost everything kind of like constantly churning in your head or already solved, and you're just kind of working towards getting whatever was here materialized, right? You have a plan, or you usually have a plan.
I think a lot about things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's directly a plan. Like, I couldn't map something out perfectly. But I mean, I think perpetually. I don't know what silence is. And I certainly have, not a design, but I stew on things a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to be very purposeful with the things that we do. And the things, I mean, it's the same with anything, right? It's the same with speech. Like, I try to be very purposeful with the things that I say, and that doesn't protect things from being miscommunicated, but I at least try to be, I try to never do something that I don't think will be good.
Mm-hmm.
Is that...
So, in that same spirit, you've talked that you've always had in your mind that you think Quackalope will be in 5 years exactly where you wanted it to be.
I don't think exactly where I want it to be.
Close enough.
My theory has always been, so the concept from the very beginning has always been, with the breakup, and me reevaluating life, right? Because I went from, this girl is the future, right? Everything I was doing was facilitating the PhD program, her career, our family. That was my design. It didn't go how I wanted. I thought about that a lot. So when that crumbled, over the course of the next 8 months or so, recovering from a 6.5-year long relationship coming to a halt, I had to figure out where my window was. Like, I'm approaching 30, and for me, I mean, I've had a lot of comments on the last video that, like, 30, like, there's a lot of people above 30, and they're like, it's not that big of a deal, and it's not the idea of it being a big deal, it's that I'm not where I thought I would be at this point, right? I always grew up in a family that was more around the idea of, like, married early on, start kids and family in mid to late 20s, like, career path, everything like that. Like, I have diverted from
the norm.
And I've always diverted from the norm a degree, but I've diverted from the norm, like, I've, like, ran off the rails a time or two. And so my concept was, if I'm 27 now, 32 seems like a mark where I have to start focusing on family, career. If I hit 32 and I don't have those things, I don't have time to experiment anymore. Mm-hmm. They have to become a priority if I want them. It's just how I operate. It doesn't mean that it's the same timeline for everyone, but it just is. It was my timeline. It was the timeline I gave myself. So I was like, if I have a 5-year window, or even a shorter window, but I was like, what is it that would be a dream job? And I was like, I love board games. It's really the only thing that, like, maintain joy in the next 8 months, right? I went neck deep into Kingdom Death and that community and the online, and so if I want to make a career in board games, there's a market for videographers, for producers, for content that I can do. I was like, what is the cost to get this career? And what I determined was weekly content, 40 hours a week, for 5 years, and by that time I get somewhere really cool. We're a year and a half in. Like, we are early on. We're not even past the midway mark of that thought process. Mm-hmm. We're already somewhere really cool. 15,000 subscribers.
Were you expecting
a group here at 1 year? No. I wasn't supposed to be full-time right now. Sure. I wasn't supposed to have a Patreon. We talked about this. Mm-hmm. The Patreon wasn't supposed to launch until, for another year. Because I want things to...
be perfect.
I want things to have life. I didn't want someone to show up to the Patreon. I didn't want to tell people to go to the Patreon without being able to give them added content or added value. Mm-hmm. I didn't want someone to show up to the Discord and have it be 3 guys talking to each other. want a community. I want international voices. I want a whole mixture of people there that are interacting and in love with this space. So I'm willing to wait until we have that. You know, you put the money down on the table. Like I'm not betting. I'm like doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, like always, you're very purposeful about every single decision that you make.
I try to be.
And you know, this is a question that I always come back to, because you have the type of personality and the type of drive and perseverance that you can be successful at absolutely anything you want. You could run a company if you wanted to. Like, you have that type of attitude towards life, and yet you decided to pursue board games. So the question becomes, and I want you to try and be like as deep with this one as you can. What do board games, what does this hobby actually mean to you? Why do board games bring you such happiness? Is it the people that surround this hobby? Is it the experience and the laughter that you get from those games? Is it the thematics and the thinking that like, what exactly made you say, you know what? I don't want to be a millionaire. I just want to. It's true. I just want to. Okay. I just want to go play games all the time and be with people that make me really happy. Like, what is it?
I mean, I enjoy games. Like you said, as deep as possible. I don't know that it goes that deep. You know, like there's a deep answer, but I don't know if it feels deep to me because it just makes sense to me, right? Like that's. Board games is where I found a community. Like, I'm really good at working. Like, very good at that.
I think they know.
But I don't, even right now, think about the friends that I have around me.
Mm-hmm.
They're within Quackalope.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have a ton of friends. I have two that I can think of. And even them are business-oriented in some degree. Like, Michael Matthews, the designer of the Quackalope logo, like, we became friends through photography and videography originally. Like, that was our original staple, right? And Chris, we became friends through starting a tattoo business back when I was in college. Like, that was our original staple. In DC, board games is where I found people, right? I fell in love with that. And after the breakup, after that shift, board games is still where I found community. And so, like, all I'm doing is pursuing this space that brings people together. That facilitates experiences and more than anything, like, bridges that gap around the table, right? Because I think it is hard. I think it is harder than people realize to connect with people right now.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, you're surprised you found a friend. It's like, that's weird for adults. Like, and I don't know how adults find friends.
Definitely not like this.
I'm not sure. Let us know how adults find friends, but it's. I think board games, in terms of if you try to do things that are good for people and good for communities and good for families, board games are that above almost anything else I could imagine. I mean, I'm sure there's other hobbyist type things, but board games facilitate experiences. And like when you look at relationships, like when you look at relationship studies or how you should spend your money. Now, this is a word of warning around Kickstarter, right? Like, collectors, you won't actually get as much joy out of collecting a thing as you might think, or buying a diamond ring, or you'll actually get a lot more out of investing in an experience. Board games are that. Self-contained little packages of experience that have led to some of the better moments in my 20s. So, like, that's what I'm pursuing. I would like to not only grow that and give that to people, but also just continue having it. Like, it's very selfish what I'm doing in a lot of ways. Like, I want to design a career so that I can play games for a living, and do so proudly. Like, do so where I can tell people I play board games for a living. I already tell people that, but I want to do it legitimately. And that's all because, like, this is my community. Like, these people are my people. Like, so I just want more of that. And I want to take as much of it as I can.
So I gotta say, that was fairly superficial. Can we go?
Great.
Can we dive deeper into this? Right?
Sure.
No. So seriously,
how do I dive deeper into this?
I have two questions that surge from this, and I'm going to ask. I think I'm going to ask them both, and you can decide to answer however you like. First question. You ready? No, I'm kidding. First question. Do you think you would have been here if it wasn't for DC? And second question, out of everything you said, you've always said that you're a fairly new gamer, right? And in these years that you've got into Quackalope, have you identified the pockets within the hobby that you love above all else? Like the particular experiences that make you always go like, this is why I love this place.
If I was not in DC, no. I mean, Labyrinth is the source. It's the source. I mean, the source for you a little bit in terms of the community that you developed in DC. But Labyrinth is where I found board games. That welcoming community, that space full of driven and intelligent and diverse people that sit down at a table from all walks of life and play a thing. Entirely tied to that, and the fact that, like I've walked into other board game stores, walked around the room, no one said a thing, and I left. Right? Like it's just I'm not good at that. Like I talked about it in another video. It's not a thing.
I'm sorry, I just remembered. Do you remember the first time I met you?
I was filming a documentary for
I found you so annoying. You were like a little bee. So we were at Labyrinth that day. I was with my wife.
You found me annoying.
I was with my wife, and I was sitting with friends, and we were playing a game that I've never... I think it was Spirit something. It wasn't Spirit Island, but it was Spirit something. And there was this guy with a beanie just like hovering around us and interrupting our game, and he was like, hey, can I record video from of you guys?
Quite what I sound like.
And I remember, I was like, why is this guy recording us? Like, what is going on? I don't get it. And I remember going up to Labyrinth, to the people at Labyrinth, I think it was Arsenio probably, and asking him, like, who's this dude? Why is he here? And Arsenio told, oh, I don't know. I thought you were there, like, without permission recording the entire space. And then later...
So you were technically on Quackalope before you were ever on Quackalope, because I believe...
It was destiny.
I believe your gray knit cap is part of the B-roll in the short documentary I did on Kathleen and Labyrinth.
That's so true.
You and Vivian, I believe, were in Quackalope. We're in a Quackalope video before we ever met.
Yeah, and then I reached out, and, from there, everything started.
So, would I be here without it? No. What parts of the community are my favorite? My game groups, selfishly. I mean, the game groups that I have in DC that
You're good at making them, too.
And the ones that we have here. Like, I'm thrilled to have Sean and Max.
Sean and Max are awesome.
It's been a blast, right? And the fact that you've been able to come down and take part in that, like I'm bridging two separate states together.
I'm a pretty social guy. I fit in anywhere.
I love the community we have, the core community we have around Quackalope. The guys we've met through the Discord and through the Patreon. That not just hovering around the side supporting us, but genuinely, I cannot wait for a chance to see these guys at a convention. I've already told you, when the world opens up again, I'm taking 6 months to go on a road trip. It's literally our 500-person goal is me being like, I'm going to go film documentaries and tell stories.
Because that's what makes you happy.
And I'm going to do it scrappy. Like, I'm going to do it sleepy. Like, I'm going to buy, my car is at 210,000 miles now. I'll probably need to upgrade that. I'm going to buy a cheap beat-up car that allows me to put an air mattress in the back, like a hiking air mattress, one of those little rollout ones. I'm going to put all my gear inside of it, and I'm going to hit the road, and I'm going to go from friend to friend, from person to person, from store to store, and talk about this space, right? Like, that's what I've wanted to do. That's one of the goals I've had from the very beginning. And I knew it would take 3 years to get there.
And now apparently it's going to be in less.
Maybe. It depends on the state of things. But I knew it would take time to get there. But the fact that I now have Geek down in Florida, or Cadus or any of these guys that I know genuinely, if I put a post out going, I'm driving through Florida, I need a place to crash and some people to play games with. I know exactly who I'm walking into. I've never met them. Max was a fan of this show. Max was a fan of Quackalope, kind of similar to you when they first came over and played. My dad was like, do you know who you're inviting over? No. But yes, at the same time. Yes, 100% at the same time. I know who the people are in this community. What type of people they will be. Now, everyone has their own little intricacies and personalities and stuff. But, so those elements have been... it goes back to community. Those elements have been the best.
This actually is a great segue into one of the most important questions that I wanted to ask you today. And that's the question of how do you feel how do you feel about becoming a personality in this space? What role do you feel being a media person is in this hobby? Like, what do you feel you can bring into that?
I mean, I flinch a little bit at the term personality.
Mm-hmm.
We're friends with people right now.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have enough of like if we get SSD levels or Dice Tower levels, maybe then we're a personality.
Well, but here's the thing, you've worked so that people know your name. You've worked really hard. You've gone to conventions. You post one thing on Facebook, and I can count at a minimum over 25 people that are influential in this industry that always come back to you, and they're responding and engaging with you all the time. And that wasn't per happenstance. That's because of who you are as a person. That's because of how hard you work. And that's because of your personality and the things that you look for. So now that you're slowly becoming that, what does it mean to you?
We have a really small space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the board game industry is, I mean, there's some big titles in it, and even the big titles are dwarfed by other media industries and entertainment interests, and even hobby industries. Like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, D&D, all of those are bigger than board games. It's like, wait a minute, why didn't I just get into Magic the Gathering? I'm not sure. Like, that would have been...
Or D&D.
Any of those. Like, and I love D&D, but it is fascinating to see our media space, the content that's produced, the figures that exist here, the game companies that create... I mean, way more people, way more publishers than you'd imagine design, develop, ship, and produce their games out of their garage than I ever realized in this space. So as far as the role of a personality or a content creator or someone who cares about this place, is both to protect the community, make sure that it maintains and is the open, welcoming space that a small industry is able to be, while also growing it, right? Figuring out ways to reach out and do silly little things and use, whether it's marketing tactics or just being a real person or going on a road trip across the country, like whatever we can do to get more people to sit down and play a game. Because when they do that, when they discover that there's a world beyond big box store games, and there's a lot of great games entering into the big box market. Like, we are expanding faster. We're expanding over the last 10 years. We've expanded faster than I think anyone realized the board game space would.
Yeah.
The level and degree of design and accessibility and crossovers when it comes to other media platforms, like, it's an exciting time to be in our space. So the role for us is to build a place that when new gamers find us, whoever they are, we have a table they can sit down at, right? Where they feel welcome and excited. The same thing, like, in a digital space or in a more physical representation of why I'm here. You asked if I would be here without DC.
Yep.
No. What did Kathleen create that brought me in?
A space, a community.
Well, a space where you walk in and you're invited to join a table, where the culture of that environment is, hey, that person's standing over there by themselves. It's my responsibility because someone did it for me. Right? Like, that's the interesting thing. Like, now if I'm at Labyrinth, I won't do it at other places because and maybe more so now, like, I'm getting more confident in the act of doing it. But, like, if I'm in Labyrinth and someone's floating, someone sat me down, right? Like, that was the moment, right? So now it's my job to do that. So I'm trying to take what she built and just do it myself.
No, and wow, that's a really good way of putting it, because I know that the more that we've kind of progressed through Quackalope, the more interest you've put into small publishers and indie publishers. And in a way, it's like you're trying to get them more attention. You're trying to, like, bring them over and give them either the advice that they need.
I care about them. These people are like I see myself in them a lot, right?
Yep.
Like, these are people who are doing things out of their garage. You know, like, I never realized that. You see a game sitting on a store shelf and you think the person's made it. And it's not. I mean, this is an industry built off of love, passion, hard work, low income, and volunteer labor. Media, publishers, designers, gamers, every second of it. And it's like, I can join that, like, you're tugging on my rope, Like, I've joined the industry's rope, right? I'm like, all right, well, we'll just
double ropes,
go. And small publishers, like, they are that. Like, they're inspiring. They're pursuing a dream at the sacrifice of themselves.
Yep.
For the love of something abstract that maybe they could describe in a variety of different ways, but the heart of it, they're pursuing seeing their creation on someone's table, facilitating a gameplay experience, right?
I've always told you that the reason why I feel that so many different people in this industry kind of gravitate towards you is because they find themselves in you, and you find them yourself in them. That idea of hard work, that idea of always pushing for something that even though it sounds far-fetched, for you it's as tangible as this.
It's a duck.
Yeah. And you're always working towards it, and every time that you have a conversation with someone, they respect you because they can see how much you've worked. Maybe. And they know where you're at, and they know how you've been. Well, but you can see it in them.
Sure.
Because if not, you wouldn't work with them. And I feel that's reciprocal in a lot of ways. And, you know, one thing that I've learned about you, and again, I have horrible memory, but one thing that I've learned about you is that you hold on to memories and experiences stronger than I think anyone I've ever met. You talk about how transformative the Appalachian Trail was, right?
Sure.
You've told me countless stories of your grandpa and how influential he was in your life, your mother, like. All of these stories feel like almost like lockets or pieces of you that have now imbued themselves in who you are. And you always go back to them. You always reference them. So, like, one of my questions is pretty much, have you formed the memory or have you formed a situation that you feel maybe is now a little part of you since you started in this journey?
It's a weird question.
Yeah. But it is something that defines you as a person. You always talk about it all the time.
It's like with my breakup, the hardest part of that for me was that she had memories that I no longer had. Right? Like meeting my great-grandmother, who had passed away during the 6 years that we were together, like lived to like 102, right? We had memories together that were like pieces, right? And then like we break up and I'm like, can I have those back?
Exactly.
I'd like that piece back. Like it's okay if you leave, that's fine, but like you just don't take that part. Man, so I mean there's a lot of different ones in different ways, and I don't know necessarily what will coalesce into a thing. I mean, when I was like mid last summer, this year's been a mess. Last year was also a mess. I had a nonprofit, rip me apart. I had a contract come to a halt earlier than it should have while I was committed to being in D.C. With a nonprofit organization up there. And it in essence cost me about $30,000. I'm still recovering from that blow on top of everything that this year has added. And that was a week before Gen Con. And I was at 1,200 subscribers. And that was a moment where that contract facilitated me starting Quackalope. Because as a freelancer, especially the way I approach it, you dedicate everything you are to the thing.
Yep.
So if I'm a wedding photographer, an event photographer, a portrait photographer, I'm that 60 hours a week. And if I work less at it, I make less. I get less contracts. I build less bridges.
Everything you put into it.
So for about 6 months, I had a stable contract that I thought that was supposed to technically last for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
They had some financial mismanagement on their part. Things that I couldn't control. So that was a week before Gen Con. And I had to make a choice, and I'm stubborn as a mule.
Oh, yes, you are.
So of course it was the only choice I was going to make, but I had to make a real choice. Do I go? Do I keep doing Quackalope? Is this the thing? Like I said, 5 years was the price I had to pay. And I knew in 5 years, I mean, the average, if you look back through your life, typically you will experience something tragic within a 5-year period of time. Some insurmountable thing that happens in almost everyone's life does it. Think back, I mean, if I flip back through the pages, I'm thinking about, my mother's passing. I'm thinking about the breakup. I'm thinking about, dropping out of high school. Like there's moments that are that pinpoint these experiences. Like life is punctuated by tragedy. And usually within a 5-year swing, there's a degree of strife or struggle or tragedy in your life or someone directly in your circle. I just didn't think it'd happen 6 months into Quackalope. I knew there'd be challenges. I didn't think it would be 6 months deep. And so I went. And I was Quackalope. Right? Like I went and I didn't talk about it. I haven't talked about it till now. Like no one knows that story. And they don't need to, because it's not the point. The point isn't that I did that. Well, now it is. Now the point is we've made it through that. So yes. I'm stronger, right? Like I know another barrier that I can overcome, another challenge I can face. Same thing with Kentucky. When I was moving back, you were like, well, that's it. We're out. And I'm like, only if you want to be.
Well, it wasn't really, we're out. It was more like, I don't see how can we make this work? How can we make it happen? I couldn't put the pieces in my head, but that's because at that time, I knew you were stubborn. I didn't know you were this stubborn.
Sure. But I'd already been through something. I'd already been stubborn. I'm in a better position now to be stubborn than I ever was then. And so, that's a moment. Being at Gamma and the world shutting down and losing every contract I had in my main career that month, on the flight back, starting to plan moving back to Kentucky, that's a moment, right? That's a thing. PAX Unplugged is one that I think might be more of a punctuation for you than for me necessarily, but it was the first convention we were at together as Quackalope. Not just you went to Gen Con and you were volunteering and a friend, but PAX U was the first one where I was like, walk with me for the first day and a half because I want to introduce you to people as my co-host. Let's build bridges.
That was awesome.
And then you get to go make connections. And you made so many connections with people I just never would have. That's a cool moment. That'll always be a story that I go back to and tell. Because the next convention we go to, we're going to be at 20,000 subscribers. And at that point, we were at 2.4.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy? And we were acting like we were higher, but still, it was amazing.
Oh, I always act like I'm higher.
Confidence is the key to most things in this particular space.
No, in any space.
That's true.
It's one thing that I learned by being a photographer. The thing that models have that regular people don't is a degree of confidence that just makes them feel comfortable in front of the camera. People are very uncomfortable. And so if you're a wedding photographer, you're shooting groups of people that don't know how to do that. So you have to facilitate it for them. You act boisterous. You act confident. You do jokes. You engage with them. You distract them from the fact that they're modeling in front of the camera, and they just be them. And them is usually fairly confident or fun, or if you're riffing back and forth, they can be confident in telling a joke or picking on a groomsman. So I had to play a confident role as a photographer to guarantee, first off, because I'm a good photographer, but also playing that role lets other people be there as well. So if I'm nervous, the bride gets nervous. Something goes wrong, it rains on your wedding day. Everyone else starts stressing. My job and the coordinator's job, and sometimes the coordinator doesn't do this well, my job is to go say, oh no, there's really cool things we can do in the rain. Do we have an umbrella? Let me put a light behind you and flash it through. You've seen those things where the raindrops are frozen in the sky? We couldn't have done that if it wasn't raining outside. That's being that has trained up the version, the confident version. So
that's fascinating. So the way that you described everything, it kind of sounds like that the one memory or the abstract of the memory is that you can do it.
Sure. I mean, that's a big lesson. That's a big thing I've learned. It's what
you did it.
Well, it's we haven't done it yet. We have 3.5 years left to go.
You made it through multiple situations that so many people
still swimming.
True, but you're here. But you're here right now, and you've pushed through situations that so many others would have said goodbye.
That's what I talked about at the what I've learned from 1 to 10,000 subscriber video. The whole message of that is that I've learned that you just do. You don't. And before, like, I could have told you 2 years ago that, like, oh, how do you start something? Well, you just do it. Like, I've always had a theory. Like, what I've always told people is the difference between being a travel photographer, a travel vlogger, and not is 6 months, $30,000, and the willingness to do it. That is all it costs, because people want to see. They want to live vicariously through you doing it. A lot of people won't. A lot of people don't. But they're willing to engage with you because they can experience through your journey a little taste of that. And I used to be able to say that. Now I know it, right? Now I can very confidently say, like, that's it. That's all. That is not that high of a price to pay.
Yeah.
And what I've told you, like, when we first started, it's like, what makes us, like, we don't need 1 million subscribers. We need, I think I've quoted people, like, 25,000 for me and 50 for you to go full time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that far away.
It really is.
Because that conversion rate for people who are willing to support back, do a Kickstarter project with us, just be our community, be our foundation, that's all we need for that percentage to make sense. And then in terms of support, like, it's the same concept. What do we need from people? Like, we need a couple thousand people to give us $1 each, or a couple hundred people to give us 5 to 10. And then we're this. It's not that big of a thing.
We're getting closer every single day. Man, and the theme that you're kind of implying or talking about right now is the theme of growth. And I think you touched on this on your video as well. And so I never pictured it like this, but you talking about how you being a cameraman, your work was to kind of orchestrate people through awkwardness and orchestrate them.
As a wedding photographer, I describe myself as a conductor.
So I just noticed that you did that with me when we started. I can now picture. So this idea of
I tricked you.
This idea of
right. You didn't say no.
This idea of giving jokes and creating situations so that I can butt in. Jesse, growth. I wasn't who I am today when we started this. I've discovered certain aspects of my own identity that I didn't know were there. I didn't know that I liked to be a quote-unquote entertainer, that I liked to be in front of this camera.
You do enjoy yourself being on camera.
Yeah, I didn't know that I liked all those things. I didn't know that I could speak and that people would want to listen.
Well, some.
Correct, some. Thank you.
I get bored pretty often.
That's true, because I don't talk about theme, but they don't. And man, for someone that struggled for so long with a lot of anxiety and a lot of personal doubt, that was really powerful for me, right? The sitting next to someone that just like exuberated confidence all the time and they were so sure about everything they did, that gave me a little bit of strength as well, and it kind of reawoke in my own person something that I let go way back years ago in my life, which was this idea of striving towards something that you dream about.
Sure.
I had kind of let go of that, and so because this is an interview and not about me.
That's the next one, buddy.
Yeah, I know.
I'll just write some notes. Exuded confidence, likes ducks quite a lot. Got it.
Where do you feel you've had the most growth? Either by personality-wise, either by aspirational. Like, where do you feel that you've kind of become better as a human being since you started in this?
I mean, I'm a much better videographer. Like,
debatable.
If you look at my old stuff compared to
debatable.
If you look at my old stuff compared to the stuff that I do now, I'm much better at that. I think I'm a little bit better at getting started. I've always been bad at like pushing things. I like having a wall to beat.
Oh, yes, you do.
I'm still bad at that, but maybe I haven't gotten better at that. I just have more deadlines, so I feel like I'm being more productive. I'm not sure. That's still up in the air, I think. I don't know. I mean, everything that I'm doing every day is improved to some degree. Like being on camera, like I'm a better presenter. I'm better on camera.
Oh, wasn't that duck one of your first videos right there?
Mm-hmm.
The review of the duck?
Yeah, that was my first one. Oh!
You really did transform completely after this. I was blown away of how different you were that day.
When
you did that, yeah, you completely changed.
That early.
Uh-huh.
early video. That was the very first test run of a review.
That if you want to check out is on Patreon.
We've done too many. We've done too many of those. I crossed the line for ad pushes like 2 ago. And so that one was like,
it's more of a joke now.
At that point, if you're a Patreon supporter, you should really at least drop your pledge for this month. Come back, please, for the love, please come back. But I understand if you don't. I don't know if it's just because I'm emotionally strapped, but I'm way more empathetic than
Yeah, I think
so. But I don't know if that's me improving in any sort of way, or it's just like I'm at the end of my emotional rope with everything, and so I am quicker to frustration in some ways, but then also like way more heartbroken over people in this space specifically, like in love with this community, to the point where I'll like fight someone.
And that's actually, so I kind of wanted to surmise everything with a little few insights into you, Jesse, specifically. Okay, well, thank you so very much for being part of this interview.
Appreciate it.
No, but seriously, I wanted to give people a little bit of a glimpse into your quirks, right? And one of those quirks is what you kind of alluded to at the beginning of this. How sensitive you are to your surroundings and to people and to words and music and poetry. And I kind of wanted to ask why you think that is. Where do you feel that level of empathy and connection comes from?
What do you mean?
Well, in the sense, so for example, you only listen to music that has a message that you agree with. Because if you listen to music that had some negative connotation, you would feel that as well, right? It almost is like it reverberates inside your body, and it's expressed once more through you. So why do you feel that is? Why do you feel like that when you listen to a piece of music or a piece of poetry, or you listen to a piece of poetry or a musical?
I don't know. I mean, when I was younger, I'd absorb things that would feed. Like, I can go back to feeling like I was a teenager by listening to a song. I mean, that music's a very strong thing. Like, stories and things that you, like, I guess there's 2 elements to it. One is I've just always been very sensitive to story and storytelling, and I've opened myself up to being way more sensitive to it. Like, the things I consume have a big, they just kind of write on me. They're like scripture on
Literally
me.
All over your body.
It's the same, like, I have, like, my Let's Begin here. I have, like, 1 Corinthians 13 tattooed up and down in Greek. Like, that was the first thing, it was but I don't know, I don't know why. I don't know. I mean, it's a hard thing to answer because you're being introspective on yourself. I've just always been very sensitive to it. And it's more that I have become aware of that, and so I'm much more conscious of that sensitivity. And I don't know if other people are as sensitive; they just don't pay attention to it or something like that. But I've always been purposeful to a degree around what I consume, and if I consume things, like, I have emotional states that I don't want to exist in. So if I consume things that lead to that, it lessens my ability to be productive or to be happy or to invest in people or to, like, just be the person that, like, I'm hoping that I can become. And so, like, I just try to guard that. I don't know that I have control of it. It's just more like I'm aware of it.
Well, you have particular playlists for things. You listen to you watch specific YouTube videos often. Like, I don't know. It's just, I've never met someone that kind of orchestrates themselves in a way, in that sense, right? Especially someone that's so empathetic. I would consider myself more sympathetic, right? So I don't have that natural tendency to just.
You are the opposite of me.
Correct, exactly. So I know it's a really weird question.
Sure, and you don't even listen to lyrics.
Correct.
You just listen to music.
But I find it so fascinating
even hear the music.
how deeply things affect you. Sure. I find it so interesting. And that's why I wanted to ask that question. I wanted to see if there was a genesis or a certain point in your life where you noticed, or when you decided to take a little bit more stock in your own personal self and you did that little bit of discovery, and it sounds like you have.
I mean, I was doing it subconsciously for a long time. I've just, over the last few years become much more I mean, I did a lot of introspective search, like throughout the breakup. Like that is just a defining moment of change in because it literally changed everything. I don't know how to avoid that. Like that was 8 months of and then and there's been some other points like that, but that's the most recent one. That's the one that's transitioned to who I am now. There would be other points that transitioned to other versions of me, but I've just become more aware of it. The biological side of the statement would be that you build pathways, through what you consume and what you entertain in your mind. So, like, if I want to be happy and motivated and driven, I listen to stuff that is happy and motivated and driven, because those neurological pathways that you design in your brain reinforce themselves. So what you feed then becomes reality, right? And so while I am very sympathetic to it, I would also say that everyone to some degree can be and is. And so if you want to be something, it's part of that motto of fake it until you make it, which I don't necessarily fully agree with that principle, that motto. There'd be a larger debate around that, I think. But the idea of taking steps in the direction that you want to be, as a way to escape sadness or escape depression or escape procrastination or lack of motivation, I think if you consume things that are driving you in that direction, that are rebuilding and establishing repetitive neural pathways, you'll be able to greater secure and have a hold of yourself. So,
yeah, and last question that I wanted to ask, because again, and I go back to this because I really do feel it's a really big defining quality about you. You've given us a lot of your stories, and I know you're very proud of them, and you hold them really dear. For example, you've talked about how you traveled the Appalachian Trail with your grandpa. You've talked about how you made a book when you were, how old were you?
I've told you that story. I haven't told other people.
Oh, you have? Oh. Well, that could be one story that you bring in.
I don't need to tell stories.
Well, but basically, you have so many sweet stories of overcoming or just bonding with others that you always go back to, and they bring you a lot of solace and happiness. And I wanted to see if you felt comfortable just sharing one of your sweetest memories that you tend to come back to, whenever maybe you're feeling sad or you're feeling one day particularly sensitive towards something, you just go back to that, and it brings a little bit of a smile to you that maybe we don't know about.
I don't know that I go back to stories for that reason. I think that's the hold up on the question. I don't know if I'm sad. I don't know that I go back to stories. If I'm sad, I go back to sad stories. If I'm gonna be honest, I don't go back to happy stories. Like the very first story that came into my mind, there was two stories that popped in your mind when you were mentioning that. And the first is when I first met my ex here in Berea, Kentucky. One of the first dates we ever had ended up with us sitting in, we live in a place where the lights can basically go black, and so we were sitting out in the back of the quad, a big open field, and sat there talking and getting to know each other until the sunrise happened. I think it is the most visceral sunrise I've ever experienced. Just something between that, the endorphins of being up all night mixed with falling in love, mixed with a legitimately beautiful sunrise, is just painted perpetually in my brain, right? So that's a story I go back to if I'm happy, because I was very happy. But that story also doesn't bring me joy now. I'm not far enough away from it that it does. And then the other one would be we did I think it was a 14-hour sprint down to, I think it was North Carolina when the eclipse happened a few years back. And the way the sunrise crested around the entire rim of the earth, and then you took off the glasses and you could see the silhouette of the sun around the moon, and you could literally physically see that black orb that kind of floats in the sky. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of a full eclipse. But it's a silhouetted black. It's a black ball in the sky, silhouetted with spires of the sun, because you can see I forget what they're called, but protrusions, the explosions that the sun has. You can see those physically with the naked eye. And like I remember that road trip, and just the fact that you can understand why ancient civilizations thought gods lived there, because it was a moment that is so altering of your perception of what the world is, that you don't quite know how to walk away from it, right? Like it's just not. I've lived for 20. By that time, it was like 24, 25 years of my life, and I'd never experienced anything like that. So those are the two stories that came to mind. Both of those are both sad and happy, and neither of them make me happy. I don't typically go. I go to happy music, or I keep being productive, or I have an old fashioned if I'm sad. Like I don't normally. I'm not actually able to absorb myself into stories in a way that pulls me out of being sad. I carry stories for different reasons, like on
your body, for example.
I have some, yeah.
That's another for another video, a discussion about all those tattoos that you always carry and how you learn how to do tattoos.
Doodles.
Not all of them.
Some of them.
Well, Jesse, man, thank you so much for like opening up. Honestly, I wanted to try and strike a balance between kind of things that were hobby adjacent,
sure,
and also things about you, things that kind of drive you forward and push you forward to do everything that you're doing for this space. So, thank you so very much for being part of the interview, man.
Do you feel like it went well? You were really
I don't
nervous.
know.
You were like, I don't know how to interview.
I'm worried that you're going to be like, as soon as this video ends up, I feel like you're going to be like, man, that was a mess. And you're going to wake up and like stand up and turn off the camera and be like, whoa, well, that was rough. That was real bad. That's my feeling.
No, you did a good job. You had a lot more insightful questions than I expected.
Well, there you go. See, like I told you, I don't have good memories, but I really do try to listen as much as I can.
Sure, now I'm a little nervous that I have to follow this.
Oh, lies and slander. You came up with your questions like in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I thought about these for so long.
You will be able to tell. So this is the second interview. We're about to do the first. We're doing them backwards, but we're going to publish them in a different way because I feel weird about putting a video out where my co-host is interviewing me.
Oh, of course, it's fine.
Before we have a conversation where I'm interviewing my co-host.
But you've been doing something where if I feel confident, you're trying to give a little power to that, and that's pretty much it. Like I told you, hey, I'm ready to go. Like, let's just do the interview.
You did it. You did it. I was planning on going first to set the stage for you feeling comfortable to do it. So that's a thing. If you made it here,
I hear you're like emotionally drained.
It was a lot of stuff. If you made it to this point, let me know. If you made it to this point, let us know in the comments down below. Do you collect stories? And if so, post one.
Oh, that would be amazing. That'd be beautiful. But regardless of what you do, guys, remember to do the important thing.
Write quack on your co-host.
Get out and play some games. We'll see you guys next time.
You should get that tattooed.
Thank you.